this. Okay. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Vidyan Karavavahai Tejasvi Navadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Chaitanyam Sarvagam Sarvam Sarvaguhashayam Yat Sarva Vishayatitam Tasmai Sarvavide Namaha. Good. Nice to, let me turn that off. Nice to see you all today. And get back here. And too many buttons to push. And welcome, of course, to all the students watching this class, attending this class, I should say, online. We continue with our study of Shankaracharya's Upadesha Sahasri, and so far it's been quite a wonderful text. And I think the verses we have today are also equally helpful in our process of spiritual growth. The topic is really the main topic of Vedanta. Atma-vichara, self-inquiry. In fact, that's probably the best definition. If you tell someone you're studying Vedanta and they ask you, well, what is that you're studying? You say it's on atma-vichara, self-inquiry. Of course, that leads to a complication. I have to tell you this joke. Decades ago, I was visiting my mother and reading one of the books of Swami Tadatmananda. I brought it along with me to read on a trip. And the title of the book is Who Am I? Was the Atma-vichara. So she sees me reading the book and said, what are you reading? And I show her the book, Who Am I? And she said, you don't know who you are? I can tell you, you're my son. It was pretty obvious to her. Okay. But anyway, atma-vichara, self-inquiry, obviously at a more profound level than that. Okay, let's begin our text. Atmaika sarva bhuteshu, atmaika sarva bhuteshu, tani tasmin chake yata, tani tasmin chake yata, paryagad vyomavat sarvam, paryagad vyomavat sarvam, shukram deepti madeshyate, shukram deepti madeshyate. Atmaha, atma, keyata, in the end of the second line. This is one of our most helpful metaphors. Atma is like space. And that atma, which is like space, is ekaha. There's only one space. And like space, keyata, like space is ekaha, atma is ekaha. Like space is sarva bhuteshu, abiding in all things. So too, consciousness, atma, fundamentally consciousness, abiding in all things. And last part here, tani tasmin cha. And tani, all those living beings, all those things that exist, tasmin cha, exist within space. Notice the flip here. Space exists in all things exist in space. To use our usual metaphor, there's space abides inside the pot, but pot also abides in space. There are two perspectives. We like both of these perspectives. Now, and let me just finish the verse and then go through it a second time with a different perspective. And the verse continues, Parayagad, like space, Parayagad, like space is all-pervasive, infinite, limitless, boundaryless, Vyomavat, like space is limitless, all-pervasive. Parayagad sarvam, pervades all. We should connect these words properly. So like space pervades all, so too consciousness pervades all. Space, now these last adjectives usually apply not to space, but to consciousness. Although space, we can say space is shukram, pure, it means here, not white. It means pure. Space is unaffected by air pollution, for example. And deeptimat, shining. And that's the adjective that doesn't work for space. Consciousness is shining in the sense that it illumines the activities, not just of your mind, of every single mind. We've discussed this before. One consciousness is simultaneously present in all living beings, illumining or revealing the activities of their minds. You've heard this before. Now, just for fun, let's play with this metaphor a little bit. So consciousness is like space. Suppose space was shining. Yeah, just you have to imagine a little bit here. Suppose space itself glowed. If space itself glowed, the inside of this pot would be illumined. Hey, doesn't it sound like consciousness in your mind? So just imagine. So if space glowed, that glowing space would illumine the inside of this pot. The glowing space would illumine the outside of this pot, which is why we look around, we can see other things. It's a helpful metaphor. If space were glowing, it would be inside of everything, illumining from the inside. So this is the metaphor. So we're extending this metaphor a little bit by imagining. By the way, this kind of imagination is not so novel. Some of you know that in, I think, early 20th century, scientists couldn't explain how electromagnetic waves traveled through space. They thought there must be some medium for these waves to move through. So they imagined, just like I'm imagining conscious space, they imagined something they called ether. So that ether was helpful to them at that time to understand the propagation of electromagnetic waves. Later, they didn't rely on that imagination later, but it was helpful at that point. And I would suggest that this idea of consciousness like shining space is helpful, and that's why we're using this metaphor. Now, a metaphor is a metaphor. It's not the real thing. So when we say consciousness is like space, that's not a dogma or a doctrine, as some other approaches in other religions depend largely on dogma and doctrine. But in Advaita Vedanta, in fact, we started our text with that word hypothesis. The first verse of this chapter, I said, was like a hypothesis that we have to investigate and discover the truth of it. Sorry. discover the truth of it for ourselves. Suppose we take this metaphor in the same light, as same light. Bad pun. Anyway, sorry. You have to think about that for a moment. Anyway, so if we take this metaphor in the same light, intentional pun, it's a hypothesis to be tested. So how shall we test it? And the next couple of verses talk about actually, next verse we'll just focus on how to confirm or test this hypothesis, although there's something a little tricky here. Let's see that. Vranasnaya, Vranasnaivorabhavena, Vranasnavyorabhavena, Sthulam deham nivarayet, Sthulam deham nivarayet, Shuddha papataya lepam, Shuddha papataya lepam, Lingam chakayam ityuta, Lingam chakayam ityuta. Before we plunge into this verse, there's quite a bit to say about it. We have to note that he's using language from the Isha Upanishad. We've seen before that Shankara seems in earlier chapters, we saw him quoting a lot, I believe, if I remember right, from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad again and again and again, which you can just imagine that while Shankara was teaching that chapter of while Shankara was composing that chapter of Upadesha Sahasri, he was simultaneously teaching Brihadaranyaka Upanishad to some students, so it was very much present in his mind. Maybe the same is true in this chapter. Perhaps he was teaching the Isha Upanishad to some of his students, because even in the prior verse, let's go back to that, there are words chosen very specifically from the Isha Upanishad. Shankara doesn't say so, but it's pretty obvious when you look at the Upanishad that he's paraphrasing it in the second half of the verse we just saw. The Isha Upanishad here, this is verse 8. Saparyagat chukramakayam avranam asnaviragam shuddhama papa vidham. So saha, talking about Atma, that's our topic. He says Atma paryagat is all pervasive. You can see that in our verse. Atma paryagat. Atma is also shukram, pure, utterly unaffected, like space is unaffected by the pollution in the air. Consciousness is unaffected by the, so to speak, pollution in your mind, whatever are the problems of your mind. So here already we see that he's picking up words from this verse of Isha Upanishad, and that continues in the next verse that we're starting to see, where he says, here avranam, asnaviragam, avranam, without wounds. Wounds generally come to the skin, so maybe we could loosely translate as skinless. Atma has no skin. Interesting that skin, we take it for granted, but it's kind of a very fundamental feature of who we are. After all, it's the envelope that keeps you inside. It distinguishes the end of you from the beginning of the rest of the world. Also, I think it's amusing that people identify themselves in terms of the color of their skin. I'm white, I'm brown, etc. Yeah, I just think that's very odd. Consciousness is white? My essential, I don't understand. And anyway, so avranam, literally not wounded, referring to the fact that Atma doesn't have skin to divide it from the outside world. Also, asnaviram, without snayu. Snayu, sometimes tendons, sometimes muscles. Anyway, the bits and pieces that hold your body together, those muscles and tendons. So here, this section of the Isha Upanishad is using that same language. Now coming back to Shankara here, he says vrana snaivoho, which is dual in number. So abhavena, due to the absence. Abhavena, due to the absence of vrana, wounds, means skin, and snayu, that which holds your body together, due to the absence, he says, sthulam deham nivarayet. Sthulam deham, the physical body, is nivarayet, is dismissed, is negated as being Atma. Atma is not the body and mind, according to this passage from Scripture. Now I want to pause here. Scripture tells you, so we said we're taking the prior verse as a hypothesis. That is, consciousness is like space. Obviously, your physical body is not like space, so it has this edge called skin that divides your body from the world outside. Space has no edge. And the body has these muscles that hold it together, and it has internal differentiation. Your body has parts, internal parts, organs, etc. What parts does space have? Is there a up, down, left, right? Space has no internal differentiation. So if that is a hypothesis that we want to confirm for Atma, that Atma is not bounded by the skin, Atma has no differentiation whatsoever. Here, Shankara responds to that by giving us some scriptural quotation that Atma has no skin, Atma has no no internal differentiation. We'll stay with that. Is this doctrine? Dogma? Why, I'm just playing right now. Why is consciousness all-pervasive like space? Because the Isha Upanishad says so. Those of you who know me well know that doesn't at all reflect my orientation, or anyone who really understands Advaita Vedanta would never use that expression because Scripture says so. So that's going back to taking scriptures as compilations of matters of faith. Whatever you're supposed to believe in is compiled in these scriptures, and you're supposed to accept all that as a matter of faith. That's not what the Upanishads are about, this Isha Upanishad, or any of the teachings of Vedanta. In prior classes, this may be some time ago, we've discussed how these scriptures are not compilations of not just faith, they're not even compilations of matters of fact. This sounds like a matter of fact. Scripture declares Atma has no boundary. Atma has no internal differentiation, according to Isha Upanishad. But when the Isha Upanishad, when the ancient rishi says that, they're not asking you to take it as a matter of faith. This is a truth for you to personally discover. Now, this is, remember, Shruti Yukti Anubhava. How many times have we talked about that? So, okay, we have, by the way, Yukti is the use of metaphor, reasoning, use of metaphor in a prior verse. Now we have Shruti, use of Isha Upanishad, but we can never ignore Anubhava, personal experience. So, in what sense can you personally confirm what the Isha Upanishad says? It says that you, Atma is you, in your essential nature, you have no edge or boundary. How can you confirm that? Not too hard. If you are a skillful meditator, it's not hard to get rid of the awareness of your physical body. And when you are not aware of your physical body, where are you? In your own experience, you experience yourself as edgeless, boundaryless, infinite. It's not hard to have that experience, and that experience confirms what the Isha Upanishad says here. You have no boundary. You have no internal differentiation also. So, when Scripture says something, it is not a matter of faith, nor is it a matter of doctrine. These are different, right? So, doctrine, maybe not like a science book giving you facts that when you studied in school, you have to remember all those facts, learn all those facts. Here we don't have to learn and remember. If you forget what the Isha Upanishad, suppose someone's enlightened and forgets this passage of the Isha Upanishad, their enlightenment goes away? This isn't based on remembering anything that the Scripture says. The purpose of the Scripture is not to tell you what to believe. The purpose of the Scripture is not to inform you with various facts. The purpose of the Scripture is to lead you to personally discover what the ancient rishis discovered. So, Shankara here refers to the Isha Upanishad negating from consciousness. Consciousness is like space because it has no edge or boundary, and it has no internal differentiation. And then in the second half, Shankara says, Shuddha apapataya lepam. And you have to bring down the just looking for some grammar here. You have to reach up to abhavena and bring that word abhavena down into the second half. That's done all the time in Sanskrit. So abhavena, with the absence of what? Lepam, the absence of taint, impurity, or sin. The absence of any impurity, Shuddha apapataya. Because of Atma being Shuddha, pure, and apapa, free from sin, just to return to our Isha Upanishad here, the ending part is Shuddham. That's exactly what Shankara has. And here the expression is atma-vichara. Vidya means invested with. So atma-vichara, Atma is not invested by, doesn't have papa, is all it means, very simply. So here again, Shankara is drawing on this scripture to make a second point. Not only is consciousness not bounded nor having any internal differentiation, as your physical body says, so sthulam deham nivarayet, but also lingam. Linga means sign, and it's often used to refer to the sukshma, sharira. The sukshma sharira is a sign that you're alive. The difference between a dead body and a living body is the presence of that sukshma sharira. For this reason, it's often called linga sharira, that which indicates the presence of life. So Shankara says that that linga sharira is also negated. One more word is also negated. One more word from the Upanishad. Akayam. Having no... kaya here, body, but lingam kaya, the sukshma sharira, the subtle body. So Shankara is saying here that Atma is not only free from the limitations of your physical body, the finitude and the internal differentiation of your physical body, but consciousness is also independent, not affected by the limitations of your subtle body. The subtle body, just take it in the sense of mind. So your mind can be full of all kinds of nonsense. Let's just say impurities. But the scripture here says shuddham, free from impurities. Your subtle body is that which travels from life to life according to the doctrine of karma, but Isha Upanishads, apapa vidham, not affected, not associated with bad karma. Further, he says, actually these are the 2 points. So your sukshma sharira has impurities. Your sukshma sharira bears the burden of past karmas. What about consciousness? So here again, the Isha Upanishad says consciousness is not affected by impurities. Consciousness is of your subtle body. Consciousness is not affected by karma. How to confirm? Again, yukti is a metaphor. Shruti is our Isha Upanishad. How to personally confirm, anubhava, that consciousness, the consciousness present in your experience right now, is utterly unaffected both by the problems of your mind as well as the past karmas you have committed. How can we be sure? So, Isha Upanishad says so. To confirm it, it's not too difficult, just a little bit of reasoning. The impurities in your mind are known or unknown? No. What do I need here? I need a different prop. I like props. Okay. This is a black pen. The pen is known to you because it's a black pen that's known to you. It's pretty obvious that the blackness of the pen belongs to the pen and not to you. Pretty normal reasoning, right? Like the blackness of the pen belongs to the pen, which is known to you. The impurities of your mind belong to your mind, which is known to you. How silly if watch this. I experience a black pen, therefore I am black. How does that sound? I experience sadness in my mind, therefore I am sad. It's the same logic. Wrong logic in this case. So we want anything known to you is separate from you. This is how we determine that Atma is Shuddha, that word used from the Isha Upanishad. And second, apapa vidham, not affected by karma. Karma belongs to the one who did the action, Whoever does the action gets the result. What does consciousness do? We've had this discussion recently when I shared with you my guru's joke. He says consciousness doesn't do anything, therefore it's good for nothing, according to him. But consciousness reveals the activities of your mind. Consciousness reveals the willful actions of your mind. Consciousness doesn't do anything. It merely shines. It merely reveals. To attribute doership to consciousness is a mistake. And it's not so complicated then to understand that consciousness is not affected by past karmas. Okay, so let us, nice. I like this section. We'll go on. Mm-hmm. Vasudevo yatha satte. Vasudevo yatha shvate. Vasudevo yatha shvate. Swadehe chabravit samam. Swadehe chabravit samam. Tadvat veti yahatmanam. Tadvat veti yahatmanam. Samam sabrahmavitamaha. Samam sabrahmavitamaha. So now, setting the Upanishad aside, he turns to the Bhagavad Gita. Nice. So Vasudeva, of course, is Sri Krishna. And what did Sri Krishna say? Abravit comes in the second line here. So Sri Krishna said that he is samam, the same, swadehe, in his own body, the body of Sri Krishna, same in the body of Sri Krishna, yatha, the same as Ashwate. Ashwata is a tree, the so-called people tree. And that tree comes in several places. It comes, of course, in chapter 15, but this is more a reference to chapter 10, Vibhuti Yoga, where Sri Krishna says, Ashwata sarva vrikshanam. He says, among all trees, I am the Ashwata tree. And we're in chapter 10, if you don't remember. It's the part of the Bhagavad Gita where Sri Krishna says quite extensively, I am the greatest of the great. Whatever is great, that is due to my glory. And he goes on at some length, and in the midst of that declaration, he happens to say, Ashwata sarva vrikshanam. Among all trees, I am the Ashwata. It's considered to be the holiest of all trees. But the point here Shankara is making is a little different. That is, Sri Krishna is saying that he is equally present in the tree as he is in his own body. That's an interesting statement to make. Of course, Sri Krishna, when he speaks in the Bhagavad Gita, he often speaks not as the individual avatara, he often speaks as Ishvara, the God of the cosmos, or in this case, we can take it as consciousness. Since that's our topic is Atma, consciousness. So we can see here that Sri Krishna says, just as, actually that comes in the second half. So Sri Krishna says he is equally present in his physical body, equally present in a tree, equally present in a rock, equally present in a mosque, in a masjid, in a church, and in a pile of filth, right? Equally present. Samam. And this tadvad, in the same way, yahaveti, one who understands this, understands what? Atmanam samam. One's own true self is the same. Saha brahmavitamaha. That person has the highest understanding. That person is absolutely enlightened. The one who sees one's true nature as consciousness being samam, sarvam samam, the same in all. So, when we loosely, we call this consciousness the so-called inner divinity, the divinity that dwells in. This is probably not a good time for the phone. Okay, so Atma, to recognize that this consciousness, which is your true nature, is equally present, not more present, I said that inner divinity. Not that some people are more divine and some people are less. Of course, we're not talking about people's behavior. That's another matter entirely. But in essence, every person is equally divine. Meaning the worst murderer, whoever that might be, is equally divine to Sri Krishna on the battlefield of the Mahabharata. This understanding is only possible in the current context, knowing that consciousness is utterly unassociated. I think several classes ago we used that word asanga. I believe we used that recently. Atma is asanga, means utterly unassociated with the problems of the body and mind. Only through that condition of being unassociated, only then can Atma be the same in all and perfectly pure in all. Again, the problems of the mind, just like the blackness of the pen, belongs to the pen and not the observer of the pen, you. In the same way, you are the observer of the body, therefore the problems of the body belong to the body, and you are the observer of the mind, and the problems of the mind belong to the mind. Then, yatha hyanya sharireshu, yatha hyanya sharireshu, mamahanta na cheshyate, mamahanta na cheshyate, asminschapi tata dehe, asminschapi tata dehe, dhi sakshi tva visheshataha, dhi sakshi tva visheshataha. I just noticed a comment on the prior verse. Is there more space in a big pot and less space in a small pot? Let's return to our prior discussion. How obvious! From one perspective, you can say that. But from a truer perspective, the small pot and the big pot equally abide in all pervasive space. Nice metaphor. Okay, Now let's continue. So, this is interesting. Start in the last line. Dhi sakshitva avisheshataha. He's giving an important teaching here, and that is consciousness in all beings, and we'll see that in a moment, has dhi sakshitva avisheshataha, is avisheshataha, without distinction. Consciousness is dhi sakshi. Dhi is buddhi, your mind. Dhi sakshi, the witness of the activities of your mind. And consciousness is, without differentiation, the witness of the activities of every mind, leading us to the observation we've made many times, the consciousness by which my mental activity, I can't say my, the consciousness by which these mental activities are known are the same as the consciousness by which your mental activities are known. Leading to this interesting observation, the same consciousness is metaphorically looking out through your eyes and my eyes. Just poetic, and just to reflect on this a little bit. One all-pervasive consciousness which is the sakshi, the witness, the illuminer, the revealer of the activities in all of our minds. Now, that okay, we need. There's something funny in this verse we have to work on a little bit. Suppose consciousness was like a human being. Suppose consciousness had an ego and a sense of identity. So this is just something that's completely ridiculous, just to give us an insight. Consciousness, of course, has no such thing. But imagine consciousness is like you, and consciousness says, I am all-pervasive consciousness. Suppose consciousness had an ego, consciousness could say, I am all-pervasive consciousness. Then we've got an interesting problem, because in the second line, first line, yatha hi anya sharireshu, other bodies, and other bodies, meaning all of these bodies, in all of these bodies, mama ahanta, and body would mean sukshma sharira as well as physical body. So mama is minus, ahanta, I-ness, talking about ego, talking about ahankara. He says, nacha ishyate. And ishyate here is, in fact, I was surprised. I looked at a couple of translations. Ishyate is wrongly translated. The convention in Sanskrit, when you see this na ishyate, is to say it's not present, it's absent. That's a very common translation. It doesn't work here at all, because can we say that ahankara is not present in other bodies? Ahankara is present here, 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 here. Ahankara is present here, although I don't pay much attention. It's just a thought. Ahankara is present here. But it's known as just a thought. It's known as not me. But here's the point. If you mistranslate, I shouldn't bore you with these more pedantic details, but I found it interesting. I checked two translations. They both made the same mistake. Ishyate here has to be taken in a root sense. Those of you who have studied some Sanskrit, you know that ish is the dhatu, meaning to desire. So, na ishyate, it's not desirable, it's not acceptable. accepted. This is a root meaning. Does not exist as a conventional meaning, but is not accepted as a root meaning. I apologize for boring you with Sanskrit details, but now we can get the meaning of this verse. And you'll see also why I ask you to imagine Atma having this sense, I am, all-pervasive consciousness. But then in your mind is the thought, I am, ego. I am a conscious being. Inside your mind is an ego, a thought, a sense of identity. And in your mind, that sense of identity says or labels itself as I am consciousness. I am a conscious being. If Atma could speak, Atma could say, hey, how dare you? You're not a conscious being. I am consciousness. And that is one way to get the sense of Shankaracharya's point here. And that is, your ego, when you say I, first of all, let's understand it properly. When you say I, you're referring to a very complex self-definition. I think in a prior class I said your 400-page biography. So that's the I. One thing that's true about that I, fundamentally true, is conscious. I am a conscious being. So one feature of that ahankara is I am a conscious being, suggesting that that I is a source of consciousness. And here's the problem. That I is part of that 400-page biography. That I is simply one more feature of your mind. That I is not a conscious being. That's why we can think of it as being an imposter. In a prior class, I described the ahankara as a thought masquerading as a conscious being. How's that? That sense of I is a thought. It's part of that 400-page biography, autobiography. So, a thought masquerading as a conscious being, an imposter. And that's why if consciousness had an ego, it would get upset. How dare you presume that you are the source of consciousness? So that's true, anya deheshu, for all other embodied beings. That ego is an imposter. Asminscha api tata dehe. Tata, and in the same way, asmin dehe api. In the same way, in one's own body. So in all these other bodies would include sukshma sharira. In all other people, that ahankara is an imposter. Similarly, in me, that ahankara is an imposter. And just to, we've had this discussion before, I'll just mention it very briefly. And that is, the goal of Advaita Vedanta is not to remove your ahankara. You know, there are some people who wrongly teach this doctrine called ahankara nasha, to destroy or remove ahankara. Turns out ahankara, that biography in your mind, is kind of helpful. If when you introduce, I'm sorry, I'm being silly, if you introduce yourself to someone and that 400 pages are blank, what will you say? Hello, I am. So the point I'm making is that self-identity we call ahankara has a functional value. The only problem comes when we take it seriously. That 400-page autobiography does not describe your true self as consciousness. Definitely describes lots about your family, about your life, about your body and mind, about all the things you've done. Absolutely, all of that is true. Why destroy that book? No need. It serves a practical value. So we're not trying to destroy the ahankara, ego. We're trying to understand that the ahankara is merely another thought. Okay, let's take one more verse. Same theme seems to continue here. Rupa sanskara tulyadhi, Rupa sanskara tulyadhi, ragadveshau bhayam chayata, ragadveshau bhayam chayata, grihyate dhishrayam tasmad, grihyate dhishrayam tasmad, Jnata shuddho bhaya sada. Jnata shuddho bhaya sada. This restates something we just talked about with this black pen. He says, Shankara says here, Rupa samskara dhi. And we'll come back to that tulya. Rupa, by the way, just an interesting observation. Swami Paramarthananda makes this observation a lot about the word rupa, which everyone goes for the meaning of form. Look in a dictionary. You'll find that form is not the first definition. Color is the first definition given for rupa. Again, I'm being pedantic, more Sanskrit details, ignore it. So he says that dhi, in your mind, are rupa, the experience of color or form, and everything else. Everything you see around you, everything you experience, it's all crammed into your mind. Not only everything you experience right now is crammed into your mind, all of your memories are also crammed into your mind, samskara. So your mind is crammed full of all of this stuff, and in the third line, grihyate dishrayam. And all of this is grihyate, grasped, understood as being dishrayam, as being located in your mind. Experience takes place in your mind. Memories take place in your mind. Your mind is the ashraya, the locus of everything you experience and everything you remember. Now, that tulyam, pick it up. Tulyam, in the same way as rupa, experiences of color, etc., and samskara, all of your memories, in the same way as all your experiences and memories are crammed into your mind, tulyam, that is the same as other stuff crammed into your mind, like what? Raga, dvesha, dual, raga and dvesha, and bhayam, fear, which is just the beginning of a list of undesirable things. So experiences come in our minds. That's a good thing. Otherwise, we couldn't relate to the world around us. Memories exist in our mind. Very helpful to remember where you left your phone, etc. So this is good stuff in your mind, but what about all the undesirable stuff in your mind? There's a lot of it, isn't it so? You may still, I find this amazing, that it's possible to have memories from decades ago, and when you bring up those memories, it's still painful. Wow. Amazing. The power of the mind to hold on to all this undesirable junk. And I'm being kind of facetious with that word junk, because all that junk is crammed into your mind. All that junk belongs to your mind, just like blackness belongs to the pen. All that junk belongs to the mind. How does the blackness of this pen affect you, the observer of the pen? How does all that junk in your mind affect you, the sakshi, the awareful witness of what's happening in your mind? This is so fundamental to Vedanta, and this is the key to, people ask how to incorporate Vedanta into our daily lives. This is one of the crucial ways, by recognizing the fact that whatever is happening in your mind right now, right now you're looking at me, listening to me, etc., trying to understand this text. Fine, all of that stuff happens in your mind. Try this. You're not, this will sound strange. Let me try this. Right now, you are not listening to me. Right now, you are not seeing me, because right now you are witnessing the activities of your mind, and in your mind happens to be the sound of my voice and the image of my body. You see the point? This is learning to disidentify with your mind. Your mind is engaged in this process of seeing. Your mind is engaged in the process of hearing. Not you. You are pure consciousness, the consciousness that reveals these processes of seeing and hearing. And the reason that's so important, just to finish this verse and this thought, the reason it's so important is through this, we'll call it discernment. Viveka is a Sanskrit word. Through this discernment, through this viveka, you gain we've used this word before, you gain this healthy detachment. What is healthy detachment? The blackness of the pen belongs to the pen. Thank goodness I'm not black. In the same way, the problems of my mind belong to the mind. Problems of the body belong to the body. Healthy detachment. The pen continues to be black. The body continues to have its problems, so take care of it. Mind continues to have its problems, take care of that as well. Don't deny a fact, but know that the blackness of the pen doesn't affect you. The problems of the body don't affect you. Problems of the mind don't affect you. Okay, good place to stop for today. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.